Good morning and welcome to our live webinar titled today, Effective Strategies for Mitigating Rising Energy Costs. I am Wayne Whipple, Vice President of Business Development with the Pennsylvania Bankers Association. I'm joined by my colleague and Director of Administration, Tiffany Chambers, from our Harrisburg headquarters. The Services Corporation promotes nearly 30 endorsed providers across the United States. Each of these companies have been thoroughly reviewed by our 13-member board of directors, which represents all 4 deposit categories and all 6 geographic deposit groups across the Commonwealth. These endorsed partners are reviewed by bankers for bankers. Each of these 29 companies have endured a stringent due diligence review by this board of directors. This review includes a thorough review of the company, its management team, current clients, and a review and assessment of the company's audited financial statements. The Pennsylvania Bankers Association has enjoyed a 13-year relationship with APPI Energy. Aside from ABA Insurance Services, APPI Energy has the second largest member bank contract count in the state. They do a lot of business with our membership. APPI Energy is a progressive partner that has continued to enhance their offerings to our member banks here in the state of Pennsylvania. With them, they work with our banks on current energy management strategy, including renewables, ESG reporting systems, and state-of-the-art technologies like their intelligence suite that track, manage, audit, trend, and report all utilities, electricity, gas, water, and waste under a single pane of glass dashboard. We thank you for joining us today. It is now my genuine pleasure to introduce today's speaker and very good friend, Dan Forgacs, Vice President of Marketing Intelligence and Analytics.
Thank you, Wayne, and good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today and taking a few minutes out of your day just to hear us talk a little bit about what's going on in the energy markets and how we hope to be able to help the PBA members. Won't spend a whole lot of time on who we are, but as Wayne kindly mentioned, we've been working and very proud to work with Pennsylvania Bankers since 2009. We do currently serve 49 member banks. And again, very proud of that relationship. Again, what we really hope to do is to help you manage and reduce your energy costs. We do that through a number of different ways, whether it's analyzing your usage, looking at the bill, getting suppliers to quote. We'll talk about all these in a little bit more. But really, the idea is to be an extension of your team. We know bankers have a lot on their plate and a lot of different obligations. So we hope to do a lot of that heavy lifting for you. And with a minimal commitment of time on your behalf, well, we can get a better understanding of your goals, risk tolerances, any efficiency measures you're currently taking, growth plans, and the like, get a better understanding of your organization, and then come back to you with customized solutions and opportunities to, again, manage or reduce your costs. So we do offer an entire holistic approach. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we get into the presentation as well. We thought, though, it might make sense to just kind of tell you a little bit about what's going on in the energy markets. It's been an extremely volatile year, both for electricity and natural gas prices. And we'll talk a little bit about that, kind of what's driving that, and give you a little bit of our forecast of where we're seeing things head as we move into the winter. And maybe hopefully offer you some suggestions of what you may be able to do with that to again, try to manage and reduce some of the risk that's currently out there. What we see here, again, I titled this, volatility is years in the making. This has been the years of volatility. In our 26-year history, these are about the most volatile energy prices we've seen. It's not just us saying that. In fact, the EIA, Energy Information Administration, says historical volatility is at a 20-plus year high. So that's presents opportunities because volatility, what folks generally worry about volatility is the upward swings, but it's also important to remember volatility can produce downward swings as well. And so if you have a qualified energy consultant who really has their finger on the pulse of the market, they can possibly help you buy on some of those inevitable dips in the market and come up with some strategies to again, try to weather the storm for the high prices and take advantage of some of the lows. What we see here in this chart is two things that I think really kind of capture a 5-year look back at both electricity and natural gas markets. The orange line is Henry Hub spot pricing. Henry Hub down in Louisiana is kind of a benchmark for U.S. natural gas prices. The spot part of it means it's basically a cash purchase. I want it today, I'll buy it today. Really the most volatile way to buy natural gas, but a good benchmark for what prices are doing. The blue line is a proprietary chart that APPI and our sister organization, the Energy Research Council, that we put together. We do that by taking literally the tens of thousands of offers that suppliers put into the market every day, and we track those, benchmark those, so we can identify trends and try to find the proverbial sweet spot of what's a good term length, where's the market headed. So again, you kind of see a couple things from this chart. You see a real strong correlation. We often say where gas goes today, power is going to go tomorrow. So where we see these upward trends in natural gas, you see it really follow suit on the electricity side of things as well. This big spike right here was Winter Storm Uri. Obviously, we're talking to folks in Pennsylvania today, but if you remember back in the February of last year, Texas and the mid-continent really experienced some extreme cold in February. The generators down there in Texas in particular were just really not ready for that kind of extreme weather. And it sent natural gas prices literally through the roof. We actually needed a bigger chart at that time to capture that upward movement. But I believe it also kind of sent a collective shiver through the entire energy market, where folks said, boy, maybe we're a little too far down the road for renewables and they're not really ready there. Maybe the supply-demand balance is a little too tight. So you see that kind of really started an upward trend. Obviously, though, we were still in the depths of COVID. So clearly things were going to kind of come back to some extent anyway, as the economy was starting to reopen and we come off these depths of the COVID lows. But what you can see is we've as a country, far surpassed where we were pre-pandemic, and things really continued to shoot up for both commodities. It's only been in the last about 2 months that we've seen some relief. We'll talk about a few of those factors. So on the right, I've got a number of bullets there, already touched upon the pandemic, Winter Storm Uri. I see we have a typo in storm, so my apologies for that. Liquefied natural gas in exports. As a country, the United States pulls about 100 BCF per day, billion cubic feet of natural gas out of the ground. For about half the year, we put that back in the ground for storage in preparation for the following winter. As a country, however, about 20% of the gas that we're pulling out of the ground that we drill for is actually sent overseas. The vast majority of that is in LNG, liquefied natural gas. If you cool gas down enough, it'll turn back into a liquid, a stable liquid you can put on a tanker and send to a foreign market. We also export some through pipelines to Mexico, but as a country, about, again, 20% of the gas we pull out of the ground, we send overseas. The war in Ukraine really put a strong demand for relatively cheap U.S. natural gas, really increased that demand. Prior to the invasion, about 40% of Europe's natural gas came from Russia. As you can imagine, Russia has turned out to be not necessarily the best trading partner for those European countries. So that is, again, really increased the demand for, again, realizing natural gas prices here have really shot up, as we see in the chart, but it's still relatively the cheapest gas that you can find on the planet, and certainly in the quantities that we're blessed with here in the United States. So certainly those were driving factors, increasing prices. One thing, not that we're going to celebrate a fire, an explosion, no lives were lost, but the second largest LNG terminal, export terminal in the U.S. is called Freeport. And back in June, they had an explosion and a fire, which basically took that facility offline. And in fact, today it's still not back online. That actually helped domestic prices because it kept about 2 BCF a day here available domestically, we were not able to export as much. So that actually helped prices. That facility is expected to go online perhaps as soon as this month, maybe not till next month or January. But again, that's coming back online. But in the meantime, we've kept about 2 BCF a day, or about 2% of the gas that we produce domestically home kept that home for use here in the U.S. The energy transition, I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, talking about Winter Storm Uri. This is, the move towards renewables, the move away from fossil fuels. The fact is, though, the renewables aren't quite ready to pick up all the slack. Coal plants are generally not economical to run. Haven't seen many new nuclear plants in the U.S. in quite some time. We've moved certainly towards natural gas, but even that is, again, a fossil fuel, does emit carbon. So we're moving towards renewables. But again, as we often say, the wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine. So it's going to be a rocky road to move towards renewables. And oftentimes, the places where that energy can be best generated isn't necessarily near a population center. And the best example I can give you of that is West Texas. Very windy, a lot of wind farms down there. Not a lot of folks live there, but we're seeing more offshore wind become developed and trying to get some of that generation closer to the population centers. And then good old-fashioned weather is the number one driver of short-term natural gas prices. So we had a very hot summer. That drove prices up. We had a cool and pleasant fall. That really helped prices come down, as well as a lot more production of natural gas. So that actually improved our inventory position. So we saw prices come down. Now we're headed into the winter months, and we'll see. It's supposed to be a slightly warmer than average winter. If that holds true, that should bode well for energy prices. But obviously, an extremely cold and a sustained cold would have the opposite impact. So it's definitely some risk on the table at this point. What's happening here in the Commonwealth? Just a couple proprietary charts again that we put together, tracking again what offers suppliers are putting into the market every day. We looked at various terms, 12, 24, and 36 months. What we see on the left here is the percent of change for our friends in Med Ed, that utility area. Again, this goes back 2 years, pretty much the depths of COVID. We can look at this on a longer or shorter time frame, but we often just go back for 2 years as kind of the baseline. And you can see a 12-month term has risen pretty dramatically, has improved quite a bit in the last couple months. So we're somewhere about 75% higher than that same term would have been 2 years ago. There are some as you go longer in the energy market, longer terms are more favorable. That allows suppliers to kind of capture some of those lower priced outer years. But again, pretty dramatic increase regardless of term. Again, 2 and 3 year terms are about 60% higher than we would have seen this time of the year 2 years ago. On the right, I just included a different one that actually looks at the actual prices themselves, as opposed to a trend chart, percentage of change for our friends in the PICO area around Philadelphia, that utility. Again, you see that, was below about 6 cents 2 years ago. A 12, 24, and 36 month agreement these days are probably about in the 9 cent range. So pretty significantly higher. Again, really bodes well for these ideas of trying to get a better handle on the energy that you do use to reduce those costs. Only so many ways to get around it, whether you're with the utility, whether you're with a competitive supplier. Energy prices are higher, but maybe the best way is to try to use less energy. And that gets into a little bit of some of the other ways that we talk about to try to mitigate some of these risks. Again, I mentioned utility prices. No real easy way to escape the fact that these commodities are quite a bit higher than they have been. We see here a listing of various utilities around the Commonwealth. Some pretty staggering numbers here. PPL, 26% increase goes into effect December 1. Duquesne Light, depending on your rate class, basically 30 to 43% increase. What we call the first energy utilities, MedEd, Penelec, Penn Power, West Penn Power, haven't really announced their commercial and industrial rates yet, but we can kind of take a little bit of a indication from what's happening on the residential end that they're probably going to continue to increase, although we did see a slight decrease in the Penelec area. But these usually, utility prices generally are set every 3 to 6 months. And I can tell you all these utilities saw pretty dramatic increases over the summer. So these are coming on the heels of that. And then PECO, again, just announced recently a 19% increase for commercial industrial customers, going up to 9,557 per kilowatt hour. So whether you're with the utility, whether you're with a competitive supplier, prices, unfortunately, are going up. What's the impact to your organization? Obviously, again, I've touched on it a lot. You folks know it all too well. Commodity prices overall, inflation overall is dramatically higher than we've seen in the past. Energy is certainly no exception. And again, I mentioned earlier, volatility is at a pretty near 20-year highs. So it's kind of hard to know, is today the right day to buy, and how long should I buy for? That's what we really hope to help you identify by looking at these trends, trying to read the tea leaves as best as we can. We don't have a crystal ball, so there's no short and fast answer. But when we look at trends, when we look at some of the drivers in the market, it helps us to help you make a more educated decision as to buying in terms of the timing. What we generally recommend, though, right out of the gate, is to be proactive, to get out ahead of it. Again, I mentioned natural gas prices are extremely volatile. Although we don't have that crystal ball, what we do know is, so we don't know if prices are going to be higher or lower in the future, but what we do know is they're going to be more volatile. And generally, that really goes back to the impact of weather. So what we often recommend is to just get out ahead of it. Doesn't mean today's necessarily the day to buy, but it's probably a good day to look, right? So if you've got another agreement that goes for another 12 months, goes for another 18 months, what we would say is why don't you just, run an RFP, start to identify which supplier is most competitive for your bank, start to look at different terms. Maybe you can budget for it a little bit. But what you can also do is say, well, I don't really want to lock in that increase, but I think it's going to come down. So why don't you guys monitor it for me? And we'll put a time frame on it. We'll say, okay, over the next 3 months, if you can get to this level, I might be interested. If the trend is higher, let me know. So I can maybe get out ahead of that. The best example I can give for really why, not waiting. Again, if we go back to Winter Storm Uri, imagine for a moment you were a energy buyer in Texas in February of 21. And you had an agreement that ended in March. And you said to your consultant or yourself or your supplier, hey, why don't you call me in February? I'll do something in February for my March start date. At that point, when the market took off, you would have had very little choice other than to lock in those extremely high rates. Had you locked in a month earlier, a year earlier, you would have avoided that entire spike. And again, I'm not here to say that we saw that coming. We had the power of foresight to avoid that. But what we do know, again, is the volatility increases because of the impact of weather. So if you can avoid that by getting out ahead of it, we think that's a prudent approach. And then suppliers and some utilities also require some advance notice, some as much as 2 months early before you leave them or add service. So again, the idea of waiting till truly the last minute kind of limits your options. We think it's better to, again, take a look at what the market's doing, perhaps put a target price in effect, but also to avoid any of these little fees or hurdles that might pop up at the last minute. So what are some things you can do about that? Again, really kind of the gist of today is we'll talk a little bit about our approach to electricity and natural gas procurement, some of the efficiency and sustainability solutions that we offer and that we're seeing really quite a bit of positive traction in the market. And again, hopefully just to have a trusted advisor. And thanks to Wayne's kind words there, we've been vetted by PBA. We've worked with a lot of your members. And again, really proud of our relationship and partnership with PBA. So what does an energy program do for you? Hopefully it does reduce your costs. In a perfect world, we're saying, hey, you can budget for it and we can save you money. That's not always the case. We can't always save folks money, but we can help them reduce that budgetary risk. When the market is moving higher, when you're coming out of perhaps a 2-year agreement that was signed in the depths of the COVID lows, you're going to be looking at higher prices. But how do you mitigate some of that? And then the idea of customer service and support. Again, we'd like to be an extension of your team. We know you've got a lot of other responsibilities. So rather than call an 800 number and try to talk to the utility or try to get a hold of that supplier, you call your dedicated APPI energy consultant or our customer service team. You talk to a live person, and it becomes our problem. You can go back to running your bank, and we'll come back to you either with a solution or here's your options or here what we were able to find for you. So our work for PBA members does not end when a contract is signed. In fact, it really just begins because we're going to ensure a smooth transition. We're going to take care of any issues or enrollment. Banks often will close a branch, maybe open another one. We can take care of all that for you. And then identify ongoing renewal options, again, well in advance of the contract end date. Some use cases, just some different things we've done for PBA members and continue to do. I won't certainly read all this, but you'll see the procurement services. Again, the idea of the solutions, really trying to identify where you're using the energy, where are the energy hogs, if you will. Maybe put some efficiency measures in place, some sustainability. Wayne touched on the idea of utility bill management. And again, that's not just for electricity or natural gas. You can really put any billed commodity through that platform. Peak demand, moving down here, Energy Star, again, adding on different branches, closing branches. All those things are things we hope to be able to help you with. And again, I won't spend a whole lot of time on that. We'll go ahead and jump into a little bit of our procurement process. Again, we try to make this as easy and painless as possible. Really, the starting point is just to analyze your usage. That can be as simple as will you just send me a bill for each of your accounts and allow the utility to release your usage history. We can then build a custom profile of your bank's energy usage, run an RFP, request for pricing. APPI, we run about 400 RFPs every month. So again, we really like to think we've got our finger on the pulse of the markets and have a fair amount of clout with these suppliers to really force them to compete on a level playing field. We often say it's not just apples to apples, it's green apples to green apples. So where they're the same, we'll tell you that, but where there's differences, and that often comes down to contract terms, we'll point those out to you as well. Some of those may be more beneficial to take on a little bit more risk. You may want to put some of that risk on the supplier. That really goes into the idea of negotiating the terms and pricing. A lot of folks will say, I'm just going to get the lowest price on the sheet until they start to see, oh, that one restricts my usage a little bit. This one doesn't have favorable payment terms. This one over here, if I put solar on, I'm gonna run into troubles that way. So we really try to take a holistic approach of your goals, objectives, risk tolerances, and plans for the future. Again, we monitor the markets, make sure that everything goes smooth and a seamless transition, and then right away start to look at, okay, what about beyond this current agreement? Where are markets headed there? Let's help you buy on those steps as well. So that's identifying the renewal solutions. So again, working on your behalf, you can focus on your bank, and we'll do as much of the heavy lifting as we can from an energy standpoint. Wayne touched on our energy intelligence suite. Again, kind of part of the whole, not just helping you get the lowest price kilowatt hour or decatherm for natural gas, but really having a good eye into where are you using energy? How can I compare this branch versus this branch over here? What about weather normalization? Maybe I need to take that out of it. But really just capturing that and automating that process of looking at your utility bills and giving you some analytics that you can actually take steps to reduce that. was saying I didn't make up, but it's kind of a good one. The least priced kilowatt is the one you don't use. So if you can identify where your usage is, where that demand is coming from, maybe you can take some actionable steps to reduce that your usage or use your demand. Benchmarking, all these things from an efficiency standpoint, you need to know where you start to know if you're making progress. So again, the idea of kind of coming in, getting a baseline, and then as you take some of these steps, you can actually measure what the impact has been. And real time versus interval data, and that again, Wayne used the phrase "a single pane of glass." I really like that one, but it kind of gives you a single view into, again, where your commodity spend is, where it's going, what's causing that, what's driving that, looking for any billing anomalies in an easy to use dashboard fashion. The E and ESG, right? Environmental, social, and governance issues. Big topic. A lot of folks, particularly in the banking industry, are concerned, and rightfully so, in terms of what's going on with the climate. Maybe that's driven by shareholders or stakeholders. Maybe that's just the bank's outward policy to do more in terms of climate change, or maybe it's even, hey, we think the SEC is going to regulate some things that are coming down the road. We gotta get a better understanding of where these what emissions we're ultimately responsible for or may have to track. So again, that's some ideas around that. Managing risk again. Maybe your clients are demanding that. Maybe your board is doing that. Maybe it's just the idea of your reputation. You want to be seen in the community as leading. Whether it's we're 100% powered by green power, or we're really tracking and trying to reduce our carbon emissions. All these things, again, whether it's marketing, supply chain, board members, regardless of the driver, it helps to be able to again benchmark and track so that you can take credit, really take actionable steps and get credit for taking those measures to reduce your carbon footprint. Again, the baseline, we kind of talked about all that. Everything goes back to the utility bills. It's an automated process. It then kicks out customizable reports and really try to give you a portfolio wide view, I should say, of the carbon emissions, and again, the energy spend across your entire footprint. REX is kind of a clean, easy way to go green, if you will. Stands for Renewable Energy Certificates. This does not mean the electrons from that wind farm come to your facility, or the solar from that solar, those electrons come from the solar farm down the road, come to your bank. You can do that. Absolutely, you can do that. But RECs are kind of a quick and easy way to green up your power supply. All that simply means is somewhere on the grid, some renewable energy was put onto the grid, and then a third party verifies it or retires it, if you will, and says, no, we can't double count this. This is, in fact, going to a bank in Pennsylvania. So that's really kind of how RECs work. They can be national in scope. Those are probably the least expensive. Or you can say, no, I want it from a wind farm in Pennsylvania. You can in anywhere in between. So again, up to 100% of your power can be considered from green. Again, that might meet some goals of yours in terms of sustainability and efficiency. Again, maybe your stakeholders are pushing for that. Again, differentiating the branding, the messaging from a marketing standpoint, even to the point of, you can, depending on your total usage and how much green power you use, you can become an EPA green power partner. Maybe even use that little EPA logo on your business card or a sticker on your door. Just again, letting your clients know you're committed to, being a good steward of the environment and putting your money where your mouth is. These are extremely inexpensive, more expensive than they had been before. But generally, we're talking about half a penny to outside a penny per kilowatt hour to green up as much as 100% of your green power. And don't hold me to those numbers, but again, we, in the old days, we used to, people would say, we'd say, hey, how about green power? And so, oh yeah, sounds good. How much is that? Well, it's 2-3 cents a kilowatt hour. I don't want to be that green, right? But now it's 4 or 5 tenths of a penny, up to a penny, a lot more affordable as these resources have come online. Now demand has come up as well, so they are more expensive than the real lows that we'd seen probably 2 years ago. But again, it's a quick and efficient way to do it. These are even open to folks in a non-competitive environment or utility, I should say. Across the Commonwealth, there are co-ops and municipally owned utilities that generally don't open up to competition. But if you're in an area of that, like that, and your utility doesn't offer a green option, feel free to give us a call. We can help you green up your energy supply, even if we can't sell you help you with the traditional brown power, if you will. You still have the ability to take advantage of RECs to green up your power supply. So happy to help folks with that. I think I've been talking fast, Wayne, because I think we had this for about 45 minutes. And I see I'm at about 31 minutes. But again, we really appreciate the opportunity to talk with folks today. Happy to answer any questions. Again, our work for PBA members comes with no upfront cost, no obligation. If we can help you manage and reduce your energy costs, we'll tell you that. If you've got the best game in town, we'll tell you that too. All with no upfront, about 15 minutes of your time to put some bills together. Maybe another 15 minutes to a half hour to share our initial results. And at that point, we can shake hands and become friends, and we'll go our separate ways. Or maybe we can help you a little bit further and dive a little bit more into what's going on in the energy markets. So I will throw it back to you, Wayne.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you have any follow-up questions to Dan or even at the association level, you know how to contact us. But want to thank you again for your time and consideration today. And Dan and Carrie, thank you very much for your partnership. Thoroughly enjoyed doing business with APPI.
Thank you, Wayne. Everybody have a great day. Thanks.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.